Hello, and welcome to the first lecture in a series I've been invited to give here at the University of Turin. Our lecture today will be focused on what I've called Hadza language contexts, setting the stage for further explorations we'll be taking in future sessions. Preliminary to getting into the language contexts themselves, I think it's useful to provide a bit of personal context about myself and how I relate to the work at hand. I often call myself a linguist interested in the languages of the Tanzanian Rift, its histories, languages, and cultures. My first engagement with the languages of the Tanzanian Rift came in 2012 while I was doing my master's degree at the University of Dar es Salaam. While there, I began work with a southern Cushitic language called Gorwa. In 2018, I expanded this scope to include a nearby Bantu language called Ihanzu. A year later, I began working with the neighboring language Hadza, and I continue to work on the documentation and description of all three languages, as well as what they tell us about the Tanzanian Rift. Additionally, this lecture will be made available online at Zenodo via the DOI on screen. In today's lecture, we will be laying some groundwork for the material that is to come. As such, we will locate Hadza within its geographic context, identify the relationships it has to other languages in the area, talk about how the Hadza language is used by the speaker community, as well as how they feel about the language, and finally, a word or two on the name of the language. First, however, to get an idea of what Hadza looks and sounds like, here's an example of a subtitled video with transcription in Hadza and translation into English, produced from the data available in the archive. Here, Ate Pandisha on the right talks to local Hadza researcher Bunga Paulo on the left about taboos associated with hunting.
Mama but batashita kwako nana apukwa nan bas kijiche atona sasa ama mtu mshibi chati pisi tswana ani iso keso baba mgilo dam.
So let's start by locating Hadza. First, Hadza is spoken in the northern part of central Tanzania, an East African state which is circled here in red on the map inset. Hadza is spoken primarily around Lake Eyasi, with major Hadza settlements indicated in blue circles here. One can see communities to the east of the lake, then a series of communities to the south of the lake, and finally there are two communities to the northwest of the lake. It should be noted that, for the most part, these communities indicated in blue are mixed. That is, they are composed of both Hadza-speaking people as well as people who do not speak Hadza and who speak other local languages, or indeed the national language Swahili. In many of these places, Hadza people live lives that are largely indistinguishable from those of their non-Hadza neighbors. Their houses, their clothing, and the food they eat are what you might encounter in other small towns or villages in the area. Here are where Hadza have come to settle in one place, perhaps to be closer to services such as schools, water wells, hospitals, and the like. Meanwhile, as one moves further into the forest, here highlighted in blue, one may begin to encounter Hadza communities often described as more traditional. These are small communities, often of 100 individuals or less, where people live in grass houses, get at least some of their daily needs from hunting and gathering in the forest, and may move these communities from time to time. Most importantly, from our point of view, it is here where the Hadza language is spoken most often, and here where it is still being transmitted to children. Following these geographic notes, it's now worth talking about how Hadza is related to other languages. In the past, and in some less careful scholarship even today, Hadza was classified as a member of the so-called Khoisan phylum of languages, here in yellow, linking it with the other non-Bantu languages which employ phonemic click consonants, like Nama, spoken in Namibia, or Ngu, spoken in the Western Cape of South Africa. Today, it is commonly accepted that the genetic grouping of Khoisan is not coherent, so represented here on this map. Furthermore, Hadza cannot be convincingly linked to any so-called Khoisan language, nor any other language for that matter. It is therefore best described as a language isolate, which means that it has no demonstrable genetic link to any other languages. With that said, even if Hadza shares no clear phylogenetic links to other languages, it does exhibit links to other languages through language contact. The Tanzanian Rift, where Hadza is spoken, is a rich and complex region in which many different languages of different phylogenetic groupings have been in contact for a long time. Here, in this map, we can get an idea of the extent of diversity I'm talking about. So first, we see our language of interest, Hadza, spoken in the area immediately around Lake Eyasi. Also in the immediate area are 4 southern Cushitic languages, members of the larger Afroasiatic phylum. These are Iraq, Gorwa, Alagwa, and Burunge. We also see Bantu languages including Ihanzu, here written Isanzu, Nyilamba, and Nyaturu, as well as Rangi and Mbugwe. Though it's not highlighted here, Sukuma is also important to mention as a Bantu contact language. On top of this, we have varieties of the southern Nilotic language Totoga, including Azamjeg, Gisamjanga, and Barabaiga. And finally, there is the Sandawe language, which is either another isolate language or a distant member of the Khoi-Kwadi group of languages spoken to the southwest of the African continent. Regarding language use and attitudes, determining language use and attitudes is a complex and important topic, and I can really only provide a rough sketch here. Happily, Jeremy Coburn's recent book chapter on Hadza language vitality provides some good recent discussion. I would also encourage those interested in further reading to consult a workshop report held in 2018 in which some Hadza-speaking people, among speakers of other languages, shared their thoughts on their language, the changes it is undergoing, and prospects for the future, and this can be accessed by scanning the QR code on screen. Suffice it to say for now, that Hadza is spoken by a small number of people, and that in most communities it could be described as definitely endangered. So this is a formal characterization on the UNESCO language endangerment scale, which characterizes languages as being mostly used by the parental generation and older. That is, children are no longer learning Hadza as their primary language. Though most Hadza people have positive attitudes about their language as a unique and important badge of identity and a conduit for their culture, major challenges to its future viability exist, including loss of traditional land and wider political marginalization. Finally, we can look at the language name. The most common name you'll see for the language is Hadza. This is how the language is labeled on major resources such as Wikipedia, Glottolog, or the Ethnologue. In Swahili, the language is often referred to as Kihadzabe, which adds the class 7 prefix to the beginning of the word to mark it as a language. In older sources, the language is often called Tindiga and less commonly Kangeju. Hadza people themselves refer to the language as Hadzane. Compare this to the name for the ethnic group, which Hadza people call Hadzabe'e, with the feminine plural suffix, which derives the ethnicity. This is again the same be as interpreted in the Swahili name. Hadza is also known by several short codes, including the ISO 639-3 code HTS and the Glotto code HADZ1240. For this lecture series, we'll be referring to the language mainly by using its English name, Hadza. So I think I'd like to finish here for now, but this is really just the beginning of our lecture series. We'll be dealing with many of these aspects in much deeper detail as the weeks go on. But for now, suffice it to say thanks to the following people. Raheli Lawi, Bunga Paulo, and Ate Kandisha appeared in this talk, and I'd like to thank them for doing so. And information on the funding which supports this research can be found here. And last but not least, my thanks go out to my academic host here, Mauro Tosco, as well as the University of Turin for supporting my stay. So thank you, and here are my references.